Hello, friends. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone's doing well. Had some thoughts I wanted to share with you, so I thought I'd hop on here this afternoon. It's rainy here in Virginia. Kind of a gray but cozy kind of day. Hello. There come some people. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. Let me go ahead and flip the camera around and introduce myself, and we'll get started. Hello there. Hey, Chantel. Good to see you on here. Hi, everybody. Come on in. Talking about bad habits today. Anybody have any bad habits? I'm drinking coffee right now, so I'm having some bad habits. But that's actually not really what I wanted to talk about today. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lena Sutherland, homeschool mom to 7. 5, yeah, too much coffee. Me too. Right. 5 of them are school aged, and the others are younger. And you can find me online over at Homeschooling Without Training Wheels, hswotrainingwheels.com. And so here's what I wanted to talk about today. I'm not really talking about mom bad habits, although I think the same thing could apply, that sometimes, quote unquote, bad habits are for a good purpose. So, have another cup of coffee, make it through the afternoon, get through until dinner time or bedtime. But what I really wanted to talk to you all about today is the kind of quote unquote bad habits that we worry about starting with our kids. We worry that we're starting something that that we're going to have to train them out of later or transition away from later, right? So you hear this all the time about everything to do with babies, right? So don't nurse your baby to sleep because then they won't learn how to get themselves to sleep. Or don't let the toddler sleep in the bed with you because then they won't know how to sleep in their own bed. Or don't let the child have a pacifier or a blanket. Or don't all of these things, because what basically the argument is, they're going to develop this habit, and then later on down the road they're going to have to somehow work their way out of this or undo this bad habit. No sugar till they're 2, all kinds of things that we hear. And I am not at all opposed to the idea of thinking down the road about what might be the eventual outworkings of choices that you made. And certainly moms who have kids older than ours, or who've been down a certain road longer than we have, can give us a heads up, and this is what I did, and this is what I've run into, and that kind of thing. And that's perfectly useful, normal, helpful. But the thing that we have to keep in mind is that even if you can look down the road and you can see, this isn't something that's sustainable, and so we're going to have to make a transition at some point, that doesn't necessarily make it wrong for you to do that thing right now. So, for example, letting the toddler sleep in the bed. I mean, obviously, they're going to leave the house some point. They're going to not be sleeping in your bed when they're, however old, I don't know. So there's going to have to be a transition at some point. So does that automatically mean that it's wrong to do it now if you know that it's not sustainable long term and that they're going to have to, change to some different method later on? And this applies to us especially as homeschool moms, because I think sometimes we get ourselves caught up in knots about things like, so if you are familiar at all with Brave Writer or the Writer's Jungle, so maybe you have a child who is just beginning to think about writing stories, and you're writing their stories down for them. So they're dictating, you're writing, and maybe you're thinking to yourself, this doesn't seem like a good idea. I mean, what if this makes them lazy? What if they, just get used to me writing everything down for them, and they're not, ready to, write their own things? And aren't we going to have to kind of work our way backwards out of this system where mommy does the writing for them? Or maybe they're doing math and you're letting them use manipulatives, or you're letting them use a multiplication chart, or you have, things up on the wall that give them clues or reminders, and you're concerned that, jot it down. Cassie, I'm so glad I think, Brave Writer has just been hugely helpful for our family. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. If you scope sometime, I'd love to hear it. So, we can do these things that on the one hand we think, well, this feels supportive. It feels like we need to do this right now. But I'm just afraid that I'm kind of setting up this bad habit, or I'm kind of training them to be lazy, or they're going to depend on me and they're not going to know how to do it for themselves, or, we're going to have to go through this rough transition when we move later on to a stage where we're going to do it differently. Like if I let my kids go in the nursery during worship, then aren't we going to have this difficult time later on when we want them to come sit in church with us? Or, just any number of things. If you've been a mom for any time at all, you can probably quickly fill up one hand with things like that where you've worried, like, if I do this, am I going to, later on have difficulties? And so what I really want to say today is that, yes, it's worth thinking through those things. And yes, it's worth talking to other moms about, what's coming down the road. But if you find that, I'm going to make this choice, we're going to have to transition later, it might be difficult, that does not automatically mean that you're wrong to go ahead and do that thing, okay? And this is the one area, the one kind of test case that really kind of burst that bubble in my head, because I really had this fear, like, I'm just a bad mom, I'm an irresponsible mom if I choose to do something that I know could cause difficulties down the road, or that we're going to have to, like, work our way out of later. Like, so the one thing that helped to free me from that is this. Let me tell you a little story. When my third child was 6 months old, I was thinking about it this morning. I can't believe I had a 6-month-old encourage me to be less independent. Okay, well, let's do a scope about that, because I think that would be an interesting thing to explore too, right? We want our kids to be independent, but we want to maintain relationship with them. Difficult transition there, I'm sure. So when my third was 6 months old, I had a barely 2-year-old and a barely 3-year-old. Like, just thinking about that makes me feel tired, but I did. And at that time, I happened to come across this book called Elimination Communication. Or that's probably not the name. Oh, The Diaper-Free Baby is the name of it. But basically, this is the premise that this book laid out. When babies are born, they naturally do not want to wet themselves. Like, they're just made, babies come out of the womb instinctually not wanting to pee or poop in their clothing. And, you can kind of get a little bit of validation of this idea if you think about, especially tiny babies, what happens the moment you take the diaper off. As soon as you take the diaper off, they pee, right? And it seems like, yeah. So it seems like that they are doing this, like it's a plan, like they're waiting for you to pull the diaper off and then they pee. Well, they really are waiting for you to pull the diaper off, because babies are born not wanting to pee themselves. And so, you can develop a system where you read the baby's cues and you take them to the potty and they do their pee and their poo basically over the potty. You hold, like with a little person, you hold their thighs in your hands and hold them over the potty, and they go potty. And I actually did this with my third when she was 6 months old. She, I'd hold her over the potty and I'd go psst, and she would pee, and it really did work. I mean, it was kind of like an interesting science experiment to do, but it really did work. And you know what I decided? I decided that I liked diapers, because I had a 3-year-old and I had a 2-year-old, and there's really not a lot of predictability with a little person going potty. I mean, little, like a 6-month-old. And I really just, physically and emotionally could not manage a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old and running to the bathroom all the time with a 6-month-old. It was just exhausting. And so, I realized one of the things that this book argues is, why train our children to pee themselves so that we can then untrain them like 3 years later. And that was what really tugged at my heart. Like, yeah, why would I train my kids to pee themselves? That just sounds like inhumane. I can't believe I would do that. Yeah, I can't either. Actually, Chantel, when I was thinking back about it today, it was like, I feel tired now. I don't, I guess, I don't know. I was younger. Thank God. I'm not sure how I managed that. I guess you just do it. But anyway, and so, hey, Jenny, I'm so glad you're on here. So anyway, but that was the thing that kind of really, opened the floodgates for me, realizing that, yep, you know what? Yes, I am. I am going to train my 6-month-old to pee herself. I'm going to, Yeah, my first two were 13 months apart, so that was a part of it. They came really close together. So that meant that we kept on having, a lot of littles. Anyway, another story. But so, and I knew, and because I had already trained my oldest, he'd already been potty trained. I knew what was coming. I knew what I was signing myself up for. And yet I thought, you know what? I'd rather potty train a 3-year-old than, have to deal with the elimination communication with a 6-month-old, because it was exhausting. And since then, I've realized, that same pattern applies to so many other things in life. And, I'm not necessarily advocating for bed sharing or not bed sharing, nursing to sleep or not nursing to sleep. What I'm saying is just that because you know that this isn't sustainable and you're going to have to change at some point doesn't make you a bad mom to do it that way now. We do what we need to do in the time when we need to do it for the reasons that apply now. And then when it's time to transition, we face that without telling ourselves, oh, see, if I hadn't been so wimpy, if I hadn't, done those things, then I wouldn't be having these struggles now. I've had moms say to me, oh, I feel so guilty because my toddler was sick, and the only thing that I could do to keep her still was to let her watch cartoons. And now that she's better, she's all fussy and angry because she just wants to watch cartoons all the time. And I feel like I did the wrong thing by letting her watch those cartoons. And I mean, do we have learning experiences? Do we look back and think, okay, this is how I do it next time? Sure, but that doesn't mean that you did the wrong thing. She was sick. For that time, those cartoons might have been the best way to help her just rest and recover. And then, yes, there is a transition phase after they're not sick anymore. We have to go through the transition, but just because there's a transition doesn't necessarily mean that our previous choices were wrong. Yes, and I think as moms, we're really expert at picking ourselves apart. It's about the bigger picture of your whole life, their whole life. Yes, I could not agree more. So I just wanted to encourage you today. I think sometimes as moms, we try to just completely predict the future and make choices based on how everything will be for all time. And obviously that's insane. Yes, and I definitely think, that the devil will do anything he can do to sidetrack us from just simply doing today what's in front of you today. Look at your kids today. Take the knowledge you have today. Speak truth to yourself, absolutely, and just do what's right in front of you. When I have a baby, my husband takes 2 weeks off work, and I spend about 2 weeks in bed just resting. And when the 2 weeks are over, I don't want to get up. Does that mean that it was not a good idea for my husband to let me rest because, then I got spoiled and now I don't want to go back to doing my mommy job, right? We do what we have to do in a season for what's right for that time, and we don't tell ourselves that the fact that there's transition later means that we messed up or we were lazy or we were irresponsible or we did something wrong. So that's what I have to share for you today. And I hope that you all are having a lovely Tuesday. It's cozy, it's rainy around here. I'm going to go read a book to my kids because that's what you do on a cozy day, right? You just snuggle up and draw and knit and have read aloud time. So you guys have a wonderful afternoon. You're welcome, Cassie. It's so good to see you here.